Okay. Okay, I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, yes. Okay. Okay, first we have the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to amend the agenda to remove an item. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, I'd like to remove the discussion topic for the administration building expansion. John has requested more time to evaluate. Okay, and do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Any
Aye.
Discussion
discussion?
on the main. Under new business, you have motion to approve proposed food and beverage amenity rules, but in the packet, it's listed as a first reading, a
Oh,
discussion.
that was a mistake. I had asked that be corrected. And it
So it
was
should say discussion. on-
No, it should be motion to approve. So where is that? So this is ouch. Any page numbers?
It's right here, it's just first reading.
Oh, here it is. Yeah, so it should say proposed motion. Sorry, I didn't double check on that. The other discussion of the agenda. And we've approved the amended agenda. So next we have approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the June 22nd regular meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion or corrections? Okay, all in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, we have approval of the June 27 special meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those are approved. Next, we have president's remarks. So I just have a couple of things. First, to remind everybody that we have an election underway and we have some excellent candidates. I encourage everybody to get out and vote. The electronic voting system has been easy peasy. There have been some questions about multiple property owners, how that works for them. And the answer that was given by the elections committee chair is that the owner votes once and that same vote is applied to all the properties. And so they called that, I can't remember what term she used. Weighted, yeah. So I don't quite get how that applies, but that's how it happens. And so if you want to vote different ways for different properties, that's an option. But you would have to request ballots, paper ballots to do that. And those paper ballots would be forthcoming out of our membership department. Secondly, this is our last regular meeting prior to the election. And I want to acknowledge the service of Director Perrone, whose term is ending, and thank him for his 3 years of service on the board and his years of service in officer positions. I also want to thank Amy and Josette for their service. We'll see how the election turns out. They may be sitting here in September as well. But
Thank you,
you
Madam.
know, thank you for stepping up and offering your services and for the good work that you've done for this board and the association.
Very welcome. Appreciate that. Thank you, Larry.
General Manager's report, John.
Before you go on, I'd like the floor.
Okay.
I have a statement to read. This is a letter to Colette from me. This letter is to advise you that I'm resigning my position as treasurer of the OPA effective today. This decision is the result of your direction to me and the rest of the board that we are prohibited from answering any financial questions raised by community members. In your email dated yesterday, you advised the board that all financial questions should be referred to info@oceanpines.org. This direction was a consequence of a question directed to me as treasurer of the association by a member of the community. In my attempt to request a financial report from the GM and the director of finance, I was advised by the GM to submit the question to info.oceanpines.org. When the issue was raised with you, you directed me and the board to submit all inquiries to the website. When I asked for authority to make such a unilateral decision, you advised me, the board, me and the board, you feel this is the best course of action. In essence, you have de facto appointed the general manager, the treasurer of the association. You do not have the authority to direct the treasurer or the board not to answer questions from community members. I cannot support this direction, which I believe contradicts the duties for the treasurer or any board member.
Okay, I'll accept that. And I'm sorry that that's the way you feel about this. I don't believe that, I don't know if you read my follow-up email indicating that there is authority neither for or against directors answering questions. The info@oceanpines.org mechanism was put in place to to reduce confusion and create a business-like approach to following up on all questions having to do with operations. I do not believe that that means that individual directors cannot answer questions, but simply would encourage directors to continue to use the info@oceanpines.org to get the questions to the right person on the operations team so that we have consistency of communication, which in my view is one of the best business practices that I think everybody sitting at this table had hoped to achieve when they each took their seat as a director.
Well, let me respond to that. If the treasurer of the association doesn't have the ability to answer a simple financial question, then you have the wrong person in the treasurer's position. This is the last of a couple instances involving a conflict between the treasurer and the general manager regarding the duties and responsibilities of the treasurer. And unfortunately, you have taken a position that the general manager should be the sole source of answering financial questions. And as I stated in my resignation letter, you are de facto appointing him treasurer of the association. He is not the treasurer of the association. He is the chief operating officer and chief personnel officer. And in addition to that, while your comment is that there is nothing in the bylaws to either allow or prohibit the treasurer or any director from responding to a community member, your direction to this board last night was that all questions should go through info.org.com. You do not have that authority to direct this board to do that. We are the representatives of this community. And if a question is raised and we can get the answer for the community, that's what we should be doing. If there is a operational issue that needs to be addressed by the operations team, that's appropriate to submit it through info@oceanpines.org. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, general manager's report. Don?
Okay, thank you, Clint. Turn page. Okay, so if right on the metrics, I'd like to just add police. I am gonna give a little update on what's going on with the police, but here, as usual, with everything well detailed out, as well as all financial and anything that we do monthly, or the initiatives, as well as the financial information, I will go through that. It's been the same format. So turn the page. Okay, 4th of July festivities, just like last year. Good time had by all. Everything went excellent. I was there. Great team effort. Debbie Donahue, her team, the police, public works, everybody. It's an amenity. It's a service. It was great. This year, the gross revenue, the estimates that I've received kind of covered all the expenses, which were around 14,000 for the fireworks. If you were there and saw it, it was just a beautiful night. Turn the page. The Marina T-Docks. So I have received a lot of emails. People have seen this, the T-Docks. We've been awaiting this for a while. They were being built. There was logistics problems with getting material by the supplier, but they're there. I believe they're both in. I was there yesterday. They put the first one in. So just a couple things on the Marina and T-Docks I want to talk about. At the Marina, we did have a situation during the year which was corrected. It's business as usual. Captain Ron Fisher has been updating Devin and me. We have met all demand. Everything is good. We are looking at, and we have submitted preliminary plans for what we hopefully can do after and will do right after the busy season for replacement of the pipes. So we are working with the proper authorities on that. And so far, we're meeting everything. I will come forward to the board probably in September on the cost and what needs to be done, but it is to follow regulatory regulations, new regulatory regulations. T-Docks, the aluminum work for the docks has been completed. Floats that go underneath the docks were back ordered, which I talked about the last couple of board meetings. They're all here. The contractor installed them. So I'll have more on that. There's a couple of pictures on the side. Turn the page. Racket sports. So there's a picture of the new courts, new fence. Well, let me go through the whole thing. So ATC completed the top coat July 15th, new sidewalk installed week of July 18th, fence and sidewalk installed week of July 18th. Now, all of this has been communicated weekly as we committed to the team. So we have kept the racket sports community updated as well as everybody else with the updates. So what I asked Debbie to do, and she's been working with the contractor and Eddie, is what's the next steps as far as the cracks? We did come forward. I got approval to do the maintenance on the cracks for the existing courts, and we are trying to balance to ensure that there are always courts open. So there is a plan. It will be communicated over the next month. But, you know, I have everything here with the dates and what it will take so that at minimum, we always have 4 courts opened between now and somewhere at the end of August or possibly the beginning of September, where everything should be completed. But you can just see a picture there of the new courts. The existing courts will look similar. Turn the page. Big win there. Software, IT, North Star. So I'm trying to keep an update always on North Star as well as anything else with IT. So North Star, as probably most of you know, the online payment was launched in March, successfully handled over $500,000 of payments to date. That's the efficiencies that I know when the board and when everybody, when we purchased this system, that's what we're looking for, the efficiencies. The team, we are starting to get that and we'll continue to get efficiencies, which I will update. We are working on all this. Keith has done a great job, as well as others, on maintaining the tickets. Very important with a project, especially with an install. You can see he's given an update that he's got 3 new active tickets in the last 30 days. and he's got one over 30 days. So a lot of coordination there, a lot of good work, also with the North Star team. So pretty excited in the way we're going. But again, we have work to do, but moving in the right direction. The internet, all 11 OPA locations now have backup on the internet service. I know Keith, Howard, and others are working on that. There's been some transition from one company to another. The hybrids, which you're all experiencing today, we have that set up in at least 3 locations. And we are working on, as we speak, we've ordered, which I've talked about before, the acoustic ceiling tiles for the grill. We'll test them out there, but apparently with the assistance of Tom Piatti in the park, they put them in, same supplier that we've used. I believe they got the supplier from us. And I'm getting back as recent as this morning, great reviews on how that acoustics worked in the park, which if you're there, it's a big room similar to ours. So that should definitely help with our meetings. Turn the page. Northgate bridge lights. Okay, so I've updated everybody that there was a, logistics, COVID, supply chain, but they are in, we have them, they are in Public Works. We're in the process now of putting in the concrete base, especially for the 4 main poles that will be at each corner of the bridge. We're gonna do those first, and then we will do the lights. I think it's 6 on each side of the bridge. So there's an example of each in the style. They are blue. I've showed that to the association and the board over the last 6-8 months. So the person that does the concrete work for us just finished over at the Racket Sports, and he'll be doing the concrete sets for the 4 pole lights. We're just waiting for the utility company to mark out all the utilities, and that should all happen hopefully in the next week or 2. Bridge lights will be installed on one side at a time. Only one side of the bridge will be open. We will communicate that. We will address that when the time comes. That would be the second phase. Everything should be completed in 3 to 4 weeks. Turn the page. Road striping. I know I've gotten a lot of questions on that. And we are going to come forward this morning or this afternoon with a request on the contract that we are recommending. But Linda will talk about that on the new capital. But it's basically, we are going to do the striping. We already had another company come in and do some of the crosswalks, golf cart crossings at the golf course. We have the locations listed there, as well as the helicopter pad. So, that all should be taking place right after Labor Day. You're actually seeing the price right there in the company, but it is a company that the county uses. It is the paint and the beads in it with the reflections that everybody has asked me or asked us to do, and that's what we're doing. More on that later. Turn the page. Volunteer Fire Department under safety. So, I got a couple things on this. Let me just give me a second. Okay, so the Ocean Pines Volunteer Fire Department, they set up a town hall meeting that they created. They handled the whole thing. We were there, several board members were there, many from the association. That's just one step in what everybody is doing. Obviously, there are steps at the board level, but I have gotten several questions. A lot of times people say, well, what exactly? We don't have all the details. We're in a preliminary planning stage, and that's still evolving, but complements the Ocean Pines Volunteer Fire Department with the town hall. And they are being transparent, but where are we right now? So I'm actually at the point where I am recruiting. I have recruited, and I'm implementing a team similar to what I did. And again, this is just in anticipation. Nobody's saying that this is a final, and that's why this is happening, but we're trying to get all the information that the questions that I receive and everybody else receives. So I have reached out to experts in the field. They have all agreed, if not voluntary, to come forward. Some are similar to on the clubhouse and the police station. And in addition to that, Ted has come forward, and he will be a great lead on this, if needed, on this team, if we go forward. But in the meantime, there is fact finding, there is information as this evolves. So Ocean Pines Volunteer Fire Department will be represented on this team. Steve and Dave Public Works, Eddie Wells, and myself. We're reviewing those high-level drawings that you all saw at the town hall. And again, they're high-level drawings, preliminary. And we are reviewing, taking into account any feedback or questions we've received and reaching out to contractors who have done this type of work before, all similar what we did in the pre-planning, or at least what I did, pre-planning stage for the other buildings that we did. Again, nothing is final. We're just trying to get as many answers to as many questions as this evolves. So right now, this is evolving. Okay, and we will update each month on this. Turn the page. Strategic plan update. So a lot has been talked about with the strategic plan. I know I have been tasked by the board to update the strategic plan and what I call codifying it, updating the binder. So let me just tell you what we're doing. First, I've met with the strategic planning committee for feedback and recommendations. So my team has also. Again, I'm implementing a strategic management team to work with department heads and managers. That's already in place. That team will be led by Linda, but I have many leaders on there that have worked on this with me from my first day in here. So we are updating that. I have been talking to Bernie. At the end, when this is all completed and my binder is completed, our binder is completed in a couple of weeks, I will sit down with Bernie and his team. Along with my team, we will review it. I will go to Budget and Finance, and then obviously this will be presented to the board and the association. But pretty much a lot of this is in line with what we've been doing and what I've been talking about from day one. So I just wanted to say a strategic planning document is not something that once completed is placed on a shelf and dusted off every 3 to 5 years. We continually look at it, and you'll see as this all evolves. And it's usually a 3-year plan or 5-year plan, depending on whether it's bulkheads or something else. It'll all come together once the binders are completed. We will be meeting with the strategic planning committee representatives over the next several weeks and with the implementation of recommendations, approach, initiatives, and objectives. Please note that strategic plan was started 3 years ago. It is a fluid document and will be formalized with that committee with input and confirmation of our approach over that period in the future. And obviously, this is just another tool. I've mentioned many financial and other tools that we've utilized, and it will be part of the budget process as well as communication, updating, and answering all questions. Just some things on that with the strategic plan. It's highlighted by infrastructure. When I first came in, we talked about updating infrastructure, golf course, racket sports, all examples of that. And this is all in line with the goals, the objectives that Strategic Bernie and his team has come about. We do want to create and sustain the strong financial position and communication that we have done over the last 3 or 4 years. Safety, the fire department, the police department, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about police. Obviously, this whole thing with the fire department and what we did on the last budget, the board, the association, Ocean Pines Volunteer Fire Department with trust and safety, but that will be part of the strategic plan. And obviously, one of the things is to keep the high community rating that Ocean Pines has. All right, before I hand off to Linda, I just want to go back. I don't have a slide for it, but I just want to talk a little bit about police. We did talk about safety. That's very important. It's one of the goals, strategic goals. I am working with the police chief. He has come forward to us. We do have a situation that's been the situation for years about recruitment and retention of our police officers, which is very important. The chief is working on, along with other municipalities in the area, with upgrading, different types of items that could help in recruitment and retention. One of them being the possibility of cars that the officers can take cars home with them, and there are benefits of that we will come forward with, and the chief will articulate. But we are working on that. The chief actually had an update meeting with me this morning. We're working with Steve to ensure of whatever cost, if any, on that. So that is something I will be coming forward with the chief as he finalizes that document. Okay, that's all for me. Linda, I know you're there. You're going to talk about drainage, dredging, mailboxes.
Did he call you Linda?
Okay, Linder.
That's a New York accent.
Drainage, we're currently doing the drainage under the pipe. This is a continuation of the Bainbridge project. Beacon Hill Road, Sandy Hook, and Pinehurst. Sandy Hook was completed last week. Pinehurst, began this week, weather permitting, they should be done. And then Beacon Hill will begin sometime next week. There will be closures. It will be listed on our website, so as everyone can check out there when the road is gonna be closed in your area. As far as the CIPP pipelining, that will begin in August. Phase 1 will include Juneway, Seagrave, Cannon, Southwind, Drawbridge, and Ocean Parkway. And then phase 2 will be Mumford's Landing Road, Fairway Lane, Whisper Court, Newport Drive, and Beaumont Court. Next slide. Dredging, it was completed last week on the properties for the 2020 dredging list. We're currently submitting the ones for 2021 dredging list. Hopefully we'll get them back so we can begin in the upcoming spring. Next slide. Mailboxes. Mailboxes, we are doing the high priority locations. The first pedestal was replaced on Charleston Road, according to the picture. That was before and after. We are working with the post office on trying to get access to the other sites. We were just made aware of Camelot Circle had 2 fall yesterday, so we are trying to make them high priority. If we do not do a temporary fix, at least we will be doing, we can try to do the pedestals on those locations as well. Next slide. CPI violations in June, we had 132 new violations, 57 closed. No new legal, so that's a good thing. People are complying out with the total of 141. That includes the 50 in legal. Next slide. Work orders in June. We had a total 165 work orders in June. 192 are still open. In work orders, the majority are open in drainage are 85, with 22 over 30 days, 9 over 60 days, and 21 over 90 days due. So they're probably gonna be contracted out. Next slide. Customer service. In June, we had 165 phone calls and emails, 41 in amenities, 41 for CPI complaints, 3 in drainage, general questions 64, and public works 16 questions. Next slide. And
Lovely picture.
that's the lovely bit by Jen Reynolds.
That's a Joe Reynolds picture, please. I don't see his name on the bottom. That's Joe Reynolds.
Joe, you on that board, Joe? Everybody?
Yeah. Looking good. That's beautiful.
Next slide, financials.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Turn the page. Okay, so last month, I came forward with a flash on May. We were maybe a day or 2 short of completing the actuals. What was one of the few months that we were off on our estimate, and we were off quite a bit, but it was actually just one item. But it was a lot of money. The variance was $200,000. It was for the memberships. So we have the actuals. The actuals have been issued to the board, issued to everybody. But I just wanted to highlight so that I can reconcile going forward. So it was mostly memberships, if not all of it. That was the only piece that hadn't come through yet. The good thing with that also is that it's showing the memberships are up. So you can see here, and you'll get an idea when I do the June financials, you know, how well we were doing with memberships. Alrighty. So we were positive. I noticed it's already been issued in the papers, and Steve has sent it to everybody on the board. All right, turn the page. All good stuff. All right, so for June, it's pretty much the format we've been using. So June, the budget net operating was 305,000. We came in current 262,000 negative for a positive, favorable to budget, which is what I'm supposed to report on. When we report on everything that the scrolls tells us we're supposed to report on, all the controllers report and everything is structured that way. So we're positive 43,000 for the month. Turn the page so I can tell you all about it. So first we got the year-to-date slide in there. So if I take the 43 on what I just showed you for May, you can see it there, the net operating, the budget is $6 million. We're coming in around 6,459,000, we're favorable 415. Again, mostly revenues, which we'll talk about in the next two slides. Organic. Okay, so here's the breakdown for the month, 43,000, and you can see led by golf, but all the amenities, we're favorable. It's revenue on the revenue side, whether it's memberships, card fees, we're up basically everywhere. We do have some favorability or some timing on expenses. And then let's go to Rec and Parks, which was negative $26,000. A couple of people already asked me about that. That one is basically timing. Debbie Donahue and her team, there's a lot of camps, there's a lot going on this time of the year, where she has incurred the expenses, and maybe only by a month or a couple of weeks, the revenue gets booked. So we try to match everything the same month. But in the updates that I've received from Debbie and from Steve, we believe it'll balance out over time. So that's timing. Aquatics is down a little bit. The admin gym off is down 14,000, beach parking 8, just some numbers, but bottom line is 43,000 to the favorable. From the page. All right, so the year to date, right? We talked about positive 415,000. How does that compare to last year? So I have Steve's here with me. Steve, last year at this point in time, what were we? Maybe we were favorable about 5 something.
Yeah, a little bit in excess of 5. I think we were closer to like 7.
7 last year. Okay, so Steve's telling me that last year, to put it in perspective, and last year, we closed the year out. I believe we're going to close it out. Steve's going to be issuing the audit report timely. Everybody will receive it. The officer who's supposed to receive it first and everything, that'll all be going out. The last year was, at this time, we were favorable, a couple 100,000 more, but again, we built into this year, right, from last year. Last year, though, we didn't start booking the bonus accrual for the food and beverage until September.
Yeah.
Until September. This year, Steve has talked to me, and we wanted to start booking it. It's like, we believe that we are going to, reach the goals. Of course, if something happens, which we're not anticipating, then we would go back and look at that. So we are trying to book and try to spread out what we would have to pay in bonuses. And you all pretty know, if you remember how much we paid last year, all good. It's a 50-50 win operation. So that's one difference there. And then obviously, it is, we're still positive, right? If anybody has any other questions on that, Steve or I will gladly follow up. Turn the page. All right, so this is just, and I think the treasurer, I think, is going to update on this also, but I'm not sure. But, we just show all the time, and this is part of the controllers report, the reserves. So since I've been around, we have been doing this monthly. We did break out over the last year or two, roads and drainage separately. BNF recommended it, and I know they have been recommending it for years, and it's certainly the right thing in this board. The board, tasked me to break it out, which was an easy thing, and we liked. So you can see the numbers are up. We have been transferring from board approval, and I'll be coming forward to the board again with the favorability now that it's realized, right? $1,941,000, just like when it was realized last year. We came forward and we asked for transfers so that we can update the reserves or update the new capital, whether it was for a T-Doc or what else did we put in there? T-Doc. We also utilized money for the assessment to decrease the assessment. I'll be coming forward again with those recommendations to the board and to the association probably over the next month or two with Steve. So again, the reserves, if anything, should be going up. But we will track that. I know that it's very important now. There's been some new legislation, regulations out there, whatever. Steve and I are actually working on that. And we will go through BNF and everybody else to make sure that everybody has all the information they need. Okay, so that's where we're at. If anybody has any questions, Steve and I are here. Turn the page. That's it for me on finance.
Okay, in the absence of a treasurer, John, would you like to go through the treasurer's report for us?
Oh, sure. Okay, treasurer's report. Turn the page. All right, so on the treasury report, this has been pretty, standard each month. with treasurer confirms, which I think is very important, our cash position. Again, it's just like the financial numbers that I just presented. Your cash position pretty much gives you an idea where we're at as an association, at least to me, and I believe everybody else. So overall, the laddered investment rate of return on CDOs for June is approximately 0.85%. As you know, all rates are going up. But I can tell you, even as an individual, and Steve works on this with his team, the rates do take a little while to go up on the CDs. But I know for a fact that Steve and the team is working on that, and I know it's overseen by Budget and Finance, the liaison, and all that stuff. As of June 30th, 2022, the association had approximately 18.2 million in cash, one of the highest numbers that I've ever reported over the years. But keep in mind, and I and many others say, the money comes in at the beginning of the year, and then we start earning through the cash, starting from now. Approximately 15 million in fully insured BOC cash sweep account, approximately 1.1 invested in CDARS, remaining 2.1 in a fully insured money market. So everything is insured and everything is reviewed. Okay, turn the page. That's for the month, or it's a point in time for the balance sheet. Okay, that's it on that. Thank you, Colette. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, thank you, John. So public comments? Oh, sorry. We'll start with the members in the room with public comments, and then we'll move to those online who wish to speak, followed by those who want to comment using the chat function. Mr. Reynolds. Name and
Joe
property.
Reynolds, 84 Blacktown Road. I went over to the golf clubhouse this morning because the Ocean Pines calendar on the website says that the meeting is at the golf clubhouse. I realized that there was a later thing that came out with some sort of internet mailing, but the calendar says, and I usually look at the calendar to where I'm going to go. It says,
Okay. Apologies for that.
no problem. I was the person that called Larry Perona to ask him about the DMA report and how it may impact, in the new law, the state of Maryland may impact our assessment. I'm kind of disappointed to hear him resign today, but there's really a lot of hypocrisy going on here. It's unbelievable. I mean, Tom Stiles and I, and any number of people reporting in this community, and even association members, have been asking board of directors members questions for decades. Board members at this table or on Facebook or on my forum answering questions or posting information. I'm not so sure what the goal is here. Again, I got to believe this just keeps going back to personal stuff. Is it that somebody doesn't like Larry Perone or somebody doesn't like me? I mean, as a practical matter, Colette, and I say this with all sincerity, it's as though you trying to drop a Berlin Wall between the board of directors and association members. It makes no sense. What do you hope to gain? Are you going to forbid every board member from posting anything on the internet? Because in essence, that's what you're doing. What's the difference between a phone call to a director and a question asked of a director on Facebook or anyplace else on the internet? I just don't know what's going on here. I can't figure it out. I think it's all wrong, but that's up to you. You just have to deal with the Berlin Wall and see if we get another board or another president. But the issue of the reserve study remains. Our DMA reserve study, the new law says that we have to maintain a certain balance as recommended by the study of our reserves. And right now we're putting in about 25% or so of the reserves we collect. We have $9 million. Now, the amount we're supposed to keep will be dictated as according to the person's doing this study. And we can hire different people. They may all come up with different answers. If we have to keep 50% instead of 25%, that's a double what we have. We're talking $9 million. This is not a minor issue, and I don't think it's inappropriate for an association member to ask the treasurer of the association what the heck is going on. Because this board hasn't really even addressed it. One of the biggest items we might have coming up. That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else in the room? Patty?
Excuse me. Good morning. My name is Patty Stevens. I'm a resident at 171 Nottingham Lane, and I'm also the chair of the Worcester County Bike and Pedestrian Coalition. And I'm here. I was very pleased to see the progress at last month's meeting about the striping of the roads. I know there's a contract out. The request that I have, and this is in both response to my own personal use as a walker and biker in the community, the comments I hear from people who participate in the walks and bike activities that we have in the community, as well as the feedback on the community survey, which ranked safe walking and biking places and safety in general very high. And my request is that consideration be given as that striping is done to the roads. And I saw the list of roads that were noted, that crosswalks be put in with that raised bead yellow marking at the places where our walking trails cross roads. For example, on the Robin Hood Trail, there are 5 road crossings where people come out of the woods and cross a road, and there's nothing marking those roads. Or on the walkway between the library and the pond, where many people walk that loop, and then they walk over to the other part of the pond and walk on the Route 90 trail. That crosswalk many years ago was painted in white. It's all kind of faded away. It's not really visible. There are places like here in front of White Horse Park where a trail begins. On Saturday mornings, as you know, hundreds and thousands of people come to the farmers market or to Thursday night festivals, and many people are walking, but there's nothing marking a crosswalk there that would come across at the trail, maybe not at the roadway entrance, but where the trail enters closer to the fire department. And so while we have a striping company here, it seems like it would be efficient to consider adding those crosswalks. It's been talked about in reports from the Recreation and Parks Committee in previous years. It's come forward in requests and recommendations from that committee, as well as from individuals. And I don't see it in the list of places that are going to be marked. So I'd like to ask if that consideration could be given either in this process or soon to address the issue of making our community safer for biking and walking by marking the crossings where people there's heavy traffic on foot and on bike. That's the first part. And related to that, I know you've set aside a special committee, and I'm thrilled about that, to deal with and interact and represent Ocean Pines with the Route 90 bridge development. And I think that's wonderful and very appropriate. Currently, the state and the county are working together. You may have seen the work at Manklin Creek. There's been the beginnings of putting some sidewalk entrances, the concrete pads and the yellow bumpy lanes there at the light. But what happens when somebody crosses the road? There's nothing on the Ocean Pines property that then continues to get them from across the crosswalk onto any other walking place. So they're either going to walk on the Goose Pond side and fall in by Southgate, where all the goose hang out, or cut across the grass, making a goat path on the grass to get over to some trail at the lake. But the state and county are investing in putting that crosswalk in, but it does not appear, or I haven't heard, that anybody from the Ocean Pines staff or management or board side is working with the state and county on what are we going to do to connect our side of the property to that crosswalk. So I'd like to ask consideration as a resident and as the Worcester County Bike and Pedestrian Coalition member and chair, that some designation be made from Ocean Pines to work with those officials to make a good, safe, use that investment that they're making and make it a good, solid connection that aligns with where people are currently walking and biking to get across Manklin Creek and across Racetrack on our side, on our property. So those are my requests.
Thank you. Chief, did you have a comment about the crosswalk issue?
There has been studies and things in the past, and the regulations of where a crosswalk can be placed and the logistics as to why you can or cannot put it there. Because when you designate an area of the property that the crosswalk's placed in, number one, you can't just put it on private property. So then there's laws that go into effect. We have the same thing with the bike path, the bike trail. We have an extended shoulder on Ocean Parkway, but it's not designated as a bike lane. A lot of people say cars are parking in the bike lane. It's not a bike lane. It's an extended shoulder. You're not a municipality. Ocean City, Salisbury, different municipalities have a designated bike lane, and there's laws that take effect in violation of that bike lane. If you cause an obstruction or something in a bike lane, same thing with a crosswalk. We get complaints all the time about speeders and there's not enough room because people are parked on the shoulder of the road, but they're legally parked on the shoulder of the road. And by not being a municipality, you don't have the authority to tell them that they can't park there. So as a police department or any enforcement, we can't write a violation for somebody. We get more complaints on St. Martin's Lane where the truck house goes out to Beecham Road because there's like nowhere to walk on the shoulder. The road can't be made any bigger, but there's not a place to put a designated pedestrian lane. Okay. So therefore we can't enforce that. Can't enforce any laws that stop people from going there. We can't designate it as a bike lane on the parkway. Public Works over years have expanded the parkway basically as far as they can to make it as, but if you notice some places it's 3 foot wide, some places it's only 2 foot wide because that's where their property boundaries are. When you designate that as a pedestrian lane, the same as you designating a crosswalk, you're actually giving the pedestrians permission to walk in the road. State law in Maryland says pedestrians have the right of way. So if you have traffic going on Ocean Parkway and there's a difference between putting a sign up there that says caution for pedestrians crossing as compared to putting white lines on the road that make it a crosswalk, which means I can write you a ticket for not stopping at the crosswalk that somebody coming out of the nature trail was going to walk across. You can't enforce that kind of law. You don't have the authority to write a ordinance that you would enforce that to make that a violation.
Is there a way, Chief, to work with the, and I can't remember on King Richard and Camelot and the 5 roads, to work with the county and whoever has authority over those roads to request that crosswalk designations be given there?
I'm going to say I don't know the answer to that before I give you the wrong answer. I know it's been looked into several times before. And again, the county is not going to come in and put a crosswalk across the street that gives the pedestrian the right of way to walk in the road when there's the flow of traffic. It's the same thing with speed bumps. You can't put speed bumps on a road anywhere in the state that has a speed limit over, I believe it's 25 miles an hour. So when people say we want speed bumps down King Richard, which I know exactly what you're talking about because the nature trail goes right behind my house. You can't put speed bumps and speed humps and things on there because the speed limit is a certain velocity that if a car was to go over it at 30 miles an hour, then we would be paying for damaged vehicles. Again, the crosswalk and the pedestrian paths, you're giving the pedestrians the right of way away from the motorists. And we don't have the authority.
So
Side streets,
And so-
25 mile an hour limit.
Yeah,
Side
street. That's
side
where I'm
streets.
talking about is
Correct.
side streets.
I believe side streets can't be over 20 miles an hour. If it's over 20 miles an hour, you can't put a speed limit. We also have to be careful about the reduction of applying for reducing speed limits because if you go under 30 miles an hour, you're opening yourself up to, many of you are aware of the companies that come in here and advertise all the time. They have golf carts that you can drive around. And if the speed limit is, the maximum posted speed limit is under 30 miles an hour, they could basically ride up and down the parkway.
Okay.
Unlicensed drivers, anybody in a golf cart could actually ride. Chris Field just did that a couple years ago in city limits. It's a town ordinance that they can actually ride in the golf course. but they dropped all their speed limits to 25 mph to do that. So again, the study that you're talking about, and things, some of it can be done. But you have to be careful who's given that authority.
Can I amend then, based on the wonderful information the chair, my request would be, could an entity or a body or a subcommittee be designated to work with the very wise chief? And maybe whoever else, Mr. Viola or the board think is appropriate to work on this issue of what can we pursue in terms of marking safe walking areas? What can we do to create signage or walkings if it's not crosswalks through the striping contract now? Could a body, currently there's nobody designated to enter that I'm aware of. It's been articles in the paper repeatedly and requests for that. So could someone be designated to be that liaison that could work with perhaps the Worcester County Coalition, maybe the Rec and Park Committee on this issue of safe walking and markings?
So I would say let's have John and Chief get together and make a recommendation to the board regarding this.
I think the resources are there because a lot of actual towns, municipalities, Snowville and Berlin and stuff, a lot of the studies that you're asking have already been done.
Absolutely.
So it's just a matter of us getting the results of their studies that I think we can use as a comparison. I
Thank
think
you
that
so
would be
much.
great.
Okay. John, are you in agreement with that?
Yes, yeah, I'll work on that with chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Anybody else in the room?
Yeah, I've got something to say.
Um,
All about saying 12 floor guy. I'm disappointed with the meetings. This morning I went to the golf course. Our general manager made us a nice home over there to have our meetings. You never know what a meeting is. One time it is here, one time it is there. I don't got a computer. I can remember years ago, and Joe knows that, and Mr. Stroud, we had meetings over here. Could get a seat. So many people. That's why we went across the street. Now we don't know what goes on. Who holds a meeting on the Wednesday of 11 o'clock? The most stupid thing I ever saw in my life. Next month, we got the general meeting, and I think so. The last general meeting, Joe, wasn't that when we had Tom, our president, that we had over 100 people?
I'm not
Yeah.
involved in your
Yeah.
public comment.
The last couple of years, we don't get nobody. Nobody. People, unfortunately, I had a lot of the people, they said, who's going to hold a meeting on a Wednesday? The last 2 years, we had the worstest supervision in this board. And I hope with this election that we get 3 new people so we get a better insight what is going on in Ocean Pine. The last 2 years was a mess. And I want to tell you something. I'm glad you got Joe back. He's the best one we had in the 32 years that I was here.
John,
But the last 2 years, it was a mess. And I want to know the next time when it's a meeting, or it's here or where. It's crazy.
Copy that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Somebody else? Oh, sir.
I'm Jack Laverine. I've been a resident of Ocean Pines 20+ years. I'm a founding member of the dog park. And I'm here to discuss a few things about the dog park.
You need to give your address. Sir, you need to give your address.
Excuse me?
Your address.
6 weeks in Willow Court, I'm sorry. Amy stopped by the dog park the other day because I questioned a few things and she was interested to come by and see what the situation was. We're basically very happy with the dog park. We just got our mulch in. Finally, we were wanting it in the spring and the dogs have been pretty muddy and messy all through the spring with the wet season we've had. But I know with the staff and so forth, problems were related to me that they couldn't get it done until now. I'm requesting if we could, and speaking from my little furry friends that can't speak for themselves, we need an agility course at the dog park to create some interest for the dogs and some training. It would greatly help certain dogs and certain people that would like to participate in that activity. Amy came out and looked at it the other day, and I think she submitted a comment to you or an email, whatever. So I speak for the the dogs and the members. We're having increased membership there at the dog park. It's a good amenity. I've had realtors tell me they've actually sold a house because the person said, "Do you have a dog park?" I said, "Yes, we do." They came out and inspected it and said, "I'll buy the house." So that was an interesting comment, I thought. So I put this before you and I thank you for the mulch that we got. We thank you for the other maintenance that the gentleman did the last 2 days. Good job. We appreciate that. And so please consider this agility course. It's a small request item, I believe, $1,000 or less. And I think our public works could install it. And if not, I can get a crew together and help out.
Yes, sir. I put it on the agenda for my next update meeting with the general manager to discuss. So
Was it going to be an agenda?
it'll be on every Monday. The vice president and I meet with the general manager to review progress on initiatives and update each other on requests such as this. And this is on the agenda for the next scheduled meeting.
Thank you, all directors, and thank you, Amy, for coming out the other day.
You rock.
Why was somebody out talking to an association member when Mr. Perot can't?
Bingo, bingo.
Run the
Thank
meeting.
you. Is there anybody else that needs? Yes.
Hi there. I'm Becky Ferguson. I live at 7 Carriage Lane. I'm actually here regarding another issue this morning, which is the proposal for the MDOT communication. But just in listening to the general comments of the meeting, I'd like to offer the following considerations, please. In regards to the fire department and the plan, I would like to see if there could be someone that has environmental expertise sit on a committee that Mr. Viola is making for the purpose of looking at that building to see if it can be a LEED building, which is an environmentally energy efficient building, and also consider the possibility of using solar shingles on that building. GAF is one of the only companies that are making solar shingles right now. I do not have any personal connection with them. I will tell you, my husband and I looked into it for our home and our own personal use. So full disclosure there. But I believe that when we're looking at an $8 million investment in a community for a building that's going to be here for 50+ years, it is an opportunity to look at something that makes a statement regarding where we might go as a community for the future. The government, federal government, has just offered additional monies in additional to what the state is currently doing in developing environmentally sound and structured buildings. So the money potentially is out there to offset some of this cost. And I think it would be a really interesting concept to look into, because not only does it fuel that building, it's actually fueling the energy that's needed in the community for our other public service buildings. So when you outfit a building with solar shingles for more than the building is actually consuming in electricity, you're putting it back into the grid, you're making the SREX credits. So Ocean Pines has a potential to make an economic impact and a financial impact on their energy costs in the future. And I think that's something that really should be looked into regarding that fire department building. The other thing that I will add to you, which is a piece of data that I've been saving that I actually sent to Bernie on the Strategic Planning Committee, of which I'm a member. I was on Facebook Marketplace several months ago, actually in January, and I came across a piece of information regarding an OP rental listing. And in that OP rental listing, the bike score for the community was 25 out of 100. And Ocean Pines is noted as having minimal bike infrastructure. So I think that's an interesting public piece of data that you might want to consider when we're looking at designing our community, not only for our quality of life, but also for the safety when it comes to looking at this road restriping, looking at how we can you know, move our community into an area where our kids want to buy our homes, because that is our next generation that is going to be wanting to be here, of that age group. And they want more natural amenities in their lifestyle. Interestingly, we have a median strip all around the Ocean Parkway, which is absolutely lovely, but it's certainly property that could be redesigned and looked at in terms of biking and pedestrian throughway. It doesn't mean that we have to eliminate the aesthetic value of that median strip, but it is certainly a piece of property that we need to look to see if it's being used as best that it can be right now. I want to throw out to Linda. Linda, there's a mailbox in the Carriage Lane area off of Windjammer. That whole unit that serves that area, that's about ready to fall down if you don't have that. And I would encourage that when the strategic plan is made with Mr. Viola, that there is accountability attached to the goals and the objectives with projected timelines. And if those timelines really aren't met, there are reasons why they're not met. And that can be justified at that time. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else in the room? Okay, Josh, I see a hand raised.
We have one hand, it's Stuart Lackernick.
Okay, Stuart.
Hey guys, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning. Hey, listen, number one, I agree with Dutch. The day and the time of these meetings are incredibly inconvenient for folks at work. But the reason I had my hand up for a public comment here was election ballots for folks with multiple properties didn't get multiple ballots in the mail. Some of these elderly folks don't have the internet, and they also don't know that they had to request paper ballot for their other properties from the election committee. It's almost too late. I think all ballots should have been mailed to everyone like we've been doing from the beginning. You know, as we transition to online voting, I think we should continue to mail all ballots to everybody. And that's my, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no further comments, purchase request, John.
Okay, we do have one. Linda, you have it?
Yes.
Linda's going to take care of it on the striping.
Okay, it's purchase order request, red line striping, request authorization to go forward with staff recommendation for $19,398 for Alpha Space Control Company Incorporated. This is the same company. Oh, go ahead.
No,
This is
Linda, you got it. Go ahead.
This is the same company that Worcester County uses, and the price is lower since they'll be doing work in the area at the same time. So they're just continuing to non-striping.
Okay, is there a motion to approve this request?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? Questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
okay, CPI violations, there are 9. New business, MDOT Route 90 subcommittee discussion, Amy.
Yes, the topic of this is to create a subcommittee that reports to the Strategic Planning Advisory Committee that would assist with the MDOT Route 90 project. The Strategic Planning Committee suggests a subcommittee that would report to SPAC. The subcommittee would be created with the purpose of bidirectional collaboration, communication, documentation, and advocacy regarding issues and outcomes related to the Maryland 90 highway and bridge expansion and construction and its long-term impact on the Ocean Pines community. The subcommittee would report to the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee and that liaison. No direct contact with state, federal officials would take place without direction from the board. Any charging documents sent received would go through the chair. The Ocean Pines community is a major stakeholder. The MDOT Route 90 project would affect homeowners in Ocean Pines that border the project. Additionally, all homes could be affected by the project by environmental, traffic, noise, and safety ramifications. This is a very long-term project that will include research, advocacy, and community input. The Route 90 project manager, Jeremy Beck, specifically stated that he wished to hear from the Ocean Pines community. Whereas the state had noted that this is a design phase, much work has already been done. The area has been reviewed for an environmental impact, which includes concepts of sea rise and 100-year storms and the environmental impact studies. This fact is important for future impact on community evacuation plans. Furthermore, this ad hoc committee would be a multidisciplinary group that incorporates representatives from the various committees in our community, specifically but not limited to the Strategic Planning and Advisory Committee, the Environmental, Rec and Parks, Board Liaison, as well as volunteer individuals with a current background in transportation engineering. The line of communication would be the same with all committees. The voluntary committee would report to the strategic committee chair and acting board liaison. Once the committee receives approval, a committee chair will then be named. Currently, the strategic planning committee plans to complete their work on the strategic plan by October, so the committee is available to take on this additional project. I think it's important to note that the Ocean Pines Community Act is a unified fashion, and it has regular engagement with the Maryland Department of Transportation. We do not want to be reactive or behind the curve, nor do we want multiple representatives in a confused line of communication. This came across by the committee. Ms. Becky Ferguson is here if anyone has questions, and the charging document is included in the board packet.
Any comments?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I like the coordination between the strategic planning committee and this subcommittee. I think it'll certainly spur some discussion and hopefully some good recommendations that we can carry forward. I think it's also important that we do act unilaterally as a whole organization. The only question I would come up on is just semantics. That we've already got. I don't know that you have to have another liaison. Reporting to a liaison is not part of our documents and everything. I just don't worry about that. I would say just the committee chair would report up through since it's being suggested that the subcommittee report up to the main committee. We've already got that communication vehicle in place, so I don't think you need to state specifically that the reporting structure is as follows. I think you can take advantage of what exists, and the information will get from point A to point B.
We just wanted to be clear as a committee that it was going to follow the same route of communication so that there wouldn't be multiple voices.
Right.
And the committee feels one reason this is important is because this is such a long-term project. This is going to outlive, certain terms on the board. So it's nice to have a central voice that is going to always be involved in the project. So that was the committee's feeling behind the need for this.
One other question: is there any sense of how long the committee will need to remain active and enabled? Is the idea that this is going to be, we'll just make up, 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, 5 years?
Years. Yeah.
It's going to
Okay.
be years, because this is going to also dovetail into the Bay Bridge.
Hold on 1 second. You need to rescind Robert's Rule of Order.
Sorry.
So rescind Robert's Rules of Order is to allow Becky to answer specific questions.
Yes, I think this is going to span 5 years, if not longer. So that is a consideration that I want to throw out to the committee, because if we create this ad hoc committee within SPAC, and those volunteers go off of that committee, is there a way that we can perpetuate that committee so that we have continuation of information? And that's extremely important in this situation, because the state will change their minds at the drop of a dime. And we may not know about it. And then it's going to be backtracking for those individuals on the committee, if they're new, to figure it out. So that's one of the reasons that is good to make the committee, one of a good reason to have the committee, but we also want to make sure that committee can stay, up to date. So that's going to be SPAC's recommendation maybe on how they handle that.
Okay, reinstate Robert's rules. Doug?
One more question along the same lines. Perhaps we should have a discussion on how best to memorialize it. I think a motion at a meeting is one way, but perhaps we should consider the benefits of perhaps having another, resolution in our book of resolutions or something along those lines, given the fact that this is going to be perpetuated over a period of years. So I think we should bring that up for future discussion.
Amy? You wanted the floor?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, so I guess the concern that I is that these are 3-year terms, committee terms are 3-year terms, just like the board terms. And so there is potentially quite a bit of turnover. And I think our staff is the most stable source of, work and contribution to this kind of an effort. And I'm thinking that this maybe would better belong to the staff. Maybe the GM would be the central figure and have a work group that would include people from his staff, from the community, so that there is that input from volunteers who have expertise in the various areas, environmental and transportation engineering and so forth. But I think the staff is going to be stable, more stable than the board and the committees. And so I think it's a great idea to have a body and to have a resource that's willing to do this research and offer some specific expertise that maybe and perspective that goes beyond the board, that of the board and the staff. But I think there needs to be a home for this committee and this project. And I think that would best reside with the staff and with perhaps the GM's office being the central owner of this type of committee.
Has if I may say a few things. Currently, the way it sits, this is only a study, but it would be good to have a body of people talking about this because, Ocean City, they just closed one of their lanes and put in a bike lane. At least that's what they're proposing. Now we're saying that NDOT would come in and widen our road, bring more traffic in, which will bottleneck down in Ocean City because they've reduced the lane for bike lane, et cetera. So all that should really be in consideration if this project will go through, and it will if the state decides, if they've got the funding. But for bike lanes, et cetera, all that, there should be somebody working on it now, representing Ocean Pines to better our community ultimately. There should be, whether it is a group or it's the GM, somebody should probably be appointed to be the go-to, because many people are gonna have questions.
Right.
And it's probably gonna be John that's gonna get the questions from the state, right? Or if there's any concern, they'll probably go to him as he represents the body. So either way, I agree that I think a group of individuals should be the go-to for us because many questions will arise and, if you have too many chiefs, it doesn't always work out. So maybe it's better to have the GM come up with a group of his team members that we can keep that consistent, flow.
Amy?
The concern is, yes, the communication with federal and state. I think with that, we need someone official, someone who's on the payroll doing that. And staff could always do charging documents to a committee asking for their help with specific issues, be it going over an environmental report or whatever. So that could be another direction that we go with it.
Frank?
My suggestion is before we do anything, since the MDOT project manager said he would like to hear from the Ocean Pines community, I would have John reach out to the MDOT project manager and ask him what he's expecting, what time frame he's expecting it over, and how he's expecting it. Because tangentially, I've only dealt with MDOT twice, once with the circle outside the Northgate, and once very tangentially with a small route called 100 going through Columbia. Okay. They will take the advice that they want, when they want it, in the form that they want it, and act on it when they want to.
would agree.
Okay. So, I think that I think Frank's comment is a good one. And I think maybe the next step would be to discuss with John how he would envision something like this. And then, I engaged in preliminary discussions with him and he sees the importance of us being engaged now, not at some unknown point in the future. And so I think, let's see what kind of a proposal he and his staff could come up with. And, I think agree with Frank, reaching out to the state to see what form and what time frame they're thinking about for input, and maybe revisit this with some recommendations from John and the staff.
I think they're gonna have to redesign. There's not enough room to put 2 additional lanes. If you go down the highway, you look at the road, how they're gonna put a secondary, they're gonna be on top of these homes.
Maybe you'd like to be on this work?
I would love to be on the work group.
Okay, so can we proceed? I think we've come to an agreement about this. John has the SPAC is definitely on his radar with respect to this. And so I think that your input will continue to become part of this discussion. So next item on the agenda is the motion for the information and activities required by the board for the construction referendum, right?
Yeah, the specific motion is for the Ocean Pines Volunteer Fire Department and the Ocean Pines Association to complete the activities defined in the 2013 Memo of Understanding between the Fire Department and the Ocean Pines Association, Attachment A, and to supply the information listed in Attachment B for the board to prepare and present a motion to initiate a referendum for the renovation of the South Fire Station. The purpose and effect of this is to both define the information and activities that must be completed and submitted to the board for it to vote on a motion to initiate a referendum to address an anticipated shortfall in funds necessary to renovate the South Fire Station. And the background, which I think we're all aware of, is the fire department has advised us that the South Fire Station is in need of some serious renovations. They've gone ahead and done their specific activities to a certain point, and now we're at the point of about being engaged with them as an association.
Okay. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Frank?
Okay, just to fill in, and there's, the whole motion, I think, can be given to the media that's present and put online, but some things that's out of our 8,000, now approaching 8,500 homeowners, some of which, some of these homeowners don't quite understand that the fire department is completely independent of the Ocean Pines Association. We have nothing to say in their management. We have no representation on their board. They operate completely independently. We do have a memo of understanding between the association and the fire department on how Ocean Pines Association can supply funding to them. Okay, so that memo of understanding was last revised with the supplement in 2013. But the most important part of that memo of understanding is that the South Fire Station was specifically excluded for construction renovation. And it basically said that to address any construction and renovation of the South Fire Station, that there would be an understanding of a joint capital campaign between the fire department and the association to raise funds for such construction. So that's the first thing in attachment A, just kind of explains the relationship between the fire department and the association. And when you get to attachment B, which I will find in a second here, another thing that, again, the majority of our homeowners probably don't understand, okay? is for us to go to referendum, we need to be able to frame a specific question to put out in front of all the homeowners in a yes or no format. To do that, there are some things that we need to know that right now we don't know. Like specifically what the cost of that building will be, how much funding is available initially to cover that, how any shortfall will be financed, and who will own the building. So until we get that information, we're not prepared to go to referendum with the basic information. The other thing, quite frankly, that we need and required by our governing documents is for the board to make a statement regarding that referendum. And right now, what that statement would typically say is the board supports this. And what we'd have to say, based on the governing documents, is to support it, that the memo of understanding would have been fulfilled, that we would have a price, and that we would be able to tell our homeowners exactly what amount of shortfall we'd be covering, how we'd be covering it, and the exact impact that that would have on their assessment. And none of that information exists. So we use the model in discussing this, and just for full disclosure, prior to submitting this motion, we did review it with the president of the fire department. Okay. And the reason is to have, I mean, it's the discussion goes like this. We, as a board, quite frequently get thrown at us that we have, quote, a fiduciary responsibility to the community. Okay, there is no greater responsibility that we have as a board than public safety. Public safety to this community comes from the police department and from the fire department. Okay, the fire department protects our lives and our property through their efforts. So as a board, it is our responsibility to make sure that all of our first responders, be it from our chief sitting in the meeting or from the fire chief, when they show up or they get a call, that they have the best training, the best equipment, and the best facilities that we can supply them with, because they're using that to protect us. Okay, that's our responsibility. We have a joint responsibility that we have executed in the case of our police department. And that is when we are supplying that training, that equipment, and those facilities to them, we have to do so in a manner that absolutely does it in the most cost-effective manner that has the least financial impact on all 8,500 of our homeowners. And that's simply what this motion is trying to do. And the way that we've done that in the past, most recent construction of our 4 buildings, we have meetings with people. In the case of the association, which we can't, I'll get into in a minute with the fire department, we couldn't do. But let's take the golf clubhouse, for example, last major big construction project. The board, prior to the board that approved the motion, spent $70,000 getting a complete set of construction documents. Those construction documents were sent out to bid. We received 3 bids from 3 qualified general contractors. Okay. One of the general contractors said in that office, okay, and said to us that we'll renovate your existing building. We really don't care. We're going to make the money that we make building existing or new construction. However, they said there's some things we want to make you aware of as a customer, right? Number one, we can build the same building with these features in it that you call important, that will be new, that will be smaller, that will be less to maintain and less to operate over its lifespan than renovating an existing building. I said, number 2 that you want to make you aware of is if we go from the 2nd floor renovation down to the 1st floor, any single system that we touch must be brought up to current codes, and you will be seeing change orders, and they will be large and substantial. So we said, okay, we'll take the bait, okay, for lack of a better term. But if to do so, we're going to go out for bids again to the same general contractors, tell them we've changed the rules, and tell them we want to go with a guaranteed maximum price or construction manager at risk method of construction, which means we can go to our homeowners and say the absolute maximum price of this building will be $1.6 million. And if it goes $1 over, that's on the construction manager, not us. And that's exactly what we're doing here, following the same process. And then we put in, and you'll see in this attachment B, a method of controlling change orders so that change orders were religiously controlled. And I think that those that have been in the golf clubhouse could ask the chief if we want to suspend Robert's rules. That gave us construction projects, of which 4 were run on this system, that all came in correct, complete, on time, and on or under budget.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Doug?
Just one real quick, and I agree, Frank, I'm going to support the thing. The only question that comes to mind, and I don't know if it's appropriate to ask it right now, but is there an expiration date on the money committed by the state? In other words, the 1.3 million. I think we just need to, I don't have to answer that right now, but I think we need to keep that in our sphere of consciousness to make sure that as we go through this process, we are applying the appropriate priorities to get it done in time.
The answer to your question is yes, there is an expiration date. It is 3 years. What that exact expiration date is.
Okay. All right.
I will tell you that the
That's fine.
chief is aware of it, and we're aware of it in that process.
Okay. Fair enough.
Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. The next is my motion. Becky, thank you. You're coming. Motion for capital fundraising project. And this motion is to direct the general manager to authorize and oversee staff to provide technical assistance to, thank you, to the OP Volunteer Fire Department for appropriation of a request for proposal to secure at least 3 bids for fundraising and to form a work group to evaluate and select a fundraising professional to provide services in support of the OP Volunteer Fire Department OPA capital fundraising effort required for the rebuild renovate of the South Fire Station per the 2011 MOU addendum. The purpose and effect is to ensure necessary support and actions to support a joint OP Volunteer Fire Department OPA fundraising campaign for the proposed rebuild renovation at the South Fire Station for the requirements of the 2011 MOU addendum. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? Doug?
I absolutely support it. Will the GM be the one picking the members of the team?
That will be, my understanding is it'll be jointly between the GM and the chief, the president of the fire company, and whoever's sitting in my chair at that point. John?
So yes, Doug, Colette, so we'll work, already spoke to Dave. As you know, he knows about, he will pick the members. I'm going to supply, or Ocean Pines will supply the technical support that he needs, whether it's communication using Josh or IT or something like that. But it's going to be joint effort. It's more us, giving technical support and other support.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Well, maybe they'll be hiring professionals, correct, to do this campaign, this
Yes.
funding?
Yeah.
Yeah,
They'll
it's
be-
not gonna be Jimmy down the road at the fruit
Right,
stand thing.
Right. And so the funding for that, it will be determined by what the proposals are that come in.
Okay.
And so then we may have another decision to make at that point. But this at least is a launch effort. Doug, you look puzzled.
I'm just trying to digest this last dialogue. Well, okay, never mind.
I just wanted to make sure that they're gonna be hiring professional individuals to do it, not just like their board of directors, like their own people. They're gonna go out of their.
Yeah, the discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, the discussion there's had with the chief is that they already have full-time jobs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
All right.
They
Thank you for
don't have that.
clarification.
yeah,
Okay.
so we
I
need
understand.
somebody who will full-time devote.
Yeah.
I understand.
Who has expertise in
Yeah,
this.
thank you.
Yeah.
My question was, do we know if the grant money that we have received, can any of that be used to fund fundraising efforts? I mean, what are the constraints on the grant money that we got? Can we use part of that grant money to help start a capital campaign to hire a professional fundraiser.
Frank?
Yeah,
No, I
I
don't think
think
you can. I don't think you
the
can.
answer to that is, I don't think we can answer that question. And the brief explanation that we had of that is that there's an expiration date out here, but that this operates very much like dealing with a grant from the state equivalent of the United States General Services Administration. And the bottom line to it is, at the end of the day, you go through an application process. And then once the application process is approved, you actually expend funds and they reimburse funds based on the criteria in the grant. But that's just a layman's thing of it. And when we met with the chief said he was actually going into, there were actually people in training that day from the fire department, learning how to deal and process the grant based on the state guidelines.
Okay. Don, did you have something to add?
Yes, I don't believe, to answer Amy's question, I don't believe it covers fundraising. That question did come up when we were talking with Dave, the president, and I'll double check with him. I don't believe that it covers that. And Frank is right. It's you spend the money and then you submit it and then you get reimbursed. They haven't received, when you use the word received, they haven't actually received the money now, but it's the process Frank talked about. So, and I don't believe it covers the fundraising cost now.
Okay,
I'll check.
thank you.
Yep, I'll check.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, this carries. Next, we have motion to approve proposed food and beverage amenity rules. This is my motion. And it is to approve the attached proposed OPA food and beverage amenity rules, which were distributed to you all some time ago. Purpose and effect is to provide our general manager written rules to include in the book of amenity rules maintained in the GM's office per resolution MO2 section 414E, reference in the amenity rules enforcement authority granted in resolution MO2 sections 12E and F. A recent review of resolution MO2 revealed that section 14A stipulates that the GM shall establish rules for participation in our amenity facilities. In addition, OPA bylaws section 15.3A gives the board of directors the authority to adopt and publish rules and regulations covering the use of those parts of the subdivision that are or will be owned by or are otherwise under control of the association. Sections 12E and F of resolution MO2 articulates the rules enforcement authority given to the manager of each amenity facility and the GM. The recent incident at our yacht club in the review of MO2 revealed the absence of rules adopted by OPA for our food and beverage facilities. This motion is meant to secure board adoption of the attached rules and authorization for them to be included in the book of amenity rules maintained in the GM's office and enforced per resolution MO2 sections 12E and F. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion. Doug?
So I agree with all of this. I think it's important that we make sure that we kind of frame in a more detailed manner what we should be doing. I have a problem with section 3 in the sentence, two pieces to the sentence. The length of such suspension will be determined and based on severity and frequency of the behavior. I think that's subjective. I think it's far too vague. Remember, we're creating a rule here that's going to be maintained over many, many years, hopefully over many, many years. So the idea of having some subjective term dictate the length of a suspension, to me, is not the best way. I feel a lot more comfortable in, well, I guess the first question is, who makes the determination? I would guess it would be the board in conjunction with the general manager, but we need to confirm that. But secondly, it along the lines of, and I'll just use an example, first offense, 30 days, next offense, 6 months, third offense, permanent, something along those lines. So it can't ever be argued that is just a subjective application of the length of a suspension based on, a situation. So I just think that we should frame that, make them far more detailed rather than some vague interpretive notion.
Do you have a proposal to submit today?
Well, I think we should
Frame
open, you know, I mean, okay, so Mad Orr Company, didn't Mad Orr Company have a 30, unless it was physical altercation, correct me if I'm wrong, unless it was some sort of physical violence, it was 30, and then I think it was a year or 6 months, and then permanent, something along those lines. Maybe we model it after that. At this point, I just want to discuss the notion of putting some specifics around it. Is 30 day, I think for, depending on a situation, 30 days certainly is reasonable. That second iteration, you know, can you argue 6 months is a reasonable? I don't know. You know, just declare something. I mean, get to the point where you make a decision. That's what we're here for, to make decisions. So maybe we go with 6 months, and then a third occurrence is permanent. I don't know, you know, or 3 years, something along those lines.
Amy?
I think it has to be some discussion of the severity of the offense, because it could be a first offense, but it's so severe that it warrants a lifetime ban. So I think it has to be a combination.
Well,
I agree with that.
Doug?
well, again, not disagreeing, but that opens the idea up to subjective. What would seem to be an egregious act to one person might not be an egregious act to somebody else. So I want to lose the idea of any kind of interpretation that could lead to legal questions about the application of the suspension. That's all. Limiting the risk, okay, is the whole point.
So in our discussions with this, and in looking at, let's go back. We've asked for specifically their policy in writing and the current management in writing, and I've gotten that. And in discussing this, their policy kind of, I'm doing it from memory, it's somewhere on my smartphone, is basically you're removed after the first offense. Okay, and you're just removed from the property. With the second offense, you may be suspended for a period up to I think it's 1 year. You may be suspended for a period of up to 1 year. So, and their encouragement to us was not to specifically lock it in with like the 30, 60, 90, but to give flexibility on doing it. So I think that when we reviewed that, and I can send that email once I dig it out, it was kind of like remove them after warning after the first, 30 days, after the first time, just leave the property tonight, come back tomorrow, have a good time. If you do it tomorrow, you could be gone for a long time.
So
And that seems to be, in their experience in 40 plus years here, that seems to be more amenable and more enforceable through the legal system.
by their opinion.
Yeah, but yeah.
I kind of like Doug's approach of making, defining the severity. And I think it's easy to define, if the incident involved bodily or property damage, that would be, potentially a permanent removal. Imminent threat of injury or anything else, I could see a 30, 90, 180, 1 year, escalation. I would not, I don't think be in favor of permanent removal for, unless you go through an escalation and you see repeated behaviors of a similar type that are less egregious than bodily or property damage, Doug.
So,
By the way, their policy is, Doug, if it's physical altercation or serious property damage, it's off for a year immediately.
yeah.
Okay,
Remember that part.
thanks for that reminder.
So, maybe, again, I just use those numbers just to throw out for sake of discussion. The idea of, maybe Frank, I think if we take the incidents that happened recently, and you could probably, say have happened in the past that we weren't aware of, is first offense is obviously removal from the property for that day. Clearly that should happen automatically. A second offense, it should be defined as, maybe it is 30, maybe 30 is the right number. Throw it out there for discussion. And then maybe, a next one might be 90 days, okay, or something along those lines. But let's not forget that, what's the latest law? There's, what's the new bill that's coming in? HB
6:15.
Right.
6:15, so that there's going to be an appeal process, okay? So I think we got to be very aware of the fact that, and that was the other thing that was kind of pushing me to say, let's put some real limits on this, and so define them, because that way, that may or may not invoke the individual to say, all right, I'm going to go through the process of filing the formal complaint, so on and so forth, for a hearing and et cetera. In other words, if they know it's only going to be 30 days, they may go, it's not worth it. I'll just go ahead and serve the 30 days. I misbehaved. I'll pay my price and then we'll move on. So that's the other reason. Again, we can't lose sight of the fact that law is going to go to, it's October 1st, I believe it goes into effect. So just, like I said, I think in order to be very consistent over time, let's put some numbers with this.
Yeah, and I would say rather than just removal for a day, and then if there's a second offense, I would say if you need to be removed from the property, if your behavior was that egregious that you couldn't remain for the rest of the evening or the visit that you had to that facility, that's enough to say 30 days and let the appeal process work. Once the appeal process is required and established, let the appeal process play out. That's just my thought.
So would it make sense for discussion, so it sounds to me, if I heard you correctly, then first obviously would be as standard business policy that's been demonstrated in the past, removal is the first quote unquote suspension, right? First level of suspension.
No, 30 removal plus 30 days.
So you're saying removal plus 30 days. Okay, that would be the first inclination. And then is it, so with that in mind, would there be a desire to look at a suspension for a second iteration?
Yeah, and I would say I like the escalation, and what I like is 30 days, 90 days, 180 a year. And then if you get to a year, I would say if there's another incident, it would probably need to be permanent. But at each step, I guess there would be a hearing per the new law. I haven't read the new law, but I'm assuming that each subsequent.
I read it. Yeah, they can continue to do it every time a suspension is levied.
Right. Frank?
Can we rescind Robert's rules for 1 minute? Because I have a question to the chief, specific question.
Yes, Robert's rules
Okay.
rescinded.
If we're going to go with a 30, 60, 90 kind of thing, and I understand that there are possibilities of appeal. Would, in your opinion, we be better off to say this, okay? And this is based on the inputs that we've had from a lot of people, given events of the last month or so. It may be typical that Larry and I are having a drink of our favorite bourbon and we argue about our golf scores, and they come over and they tell us, hey guys, cool down, or maybe go take a break. And they could remove us for a day. Okay, just say, come back tomorrow, no problem. And then we come back tomorrow and we maintain that argument, and then it's time to go for 30 days, okay? Would, in your opinion, we'd be better off at that time if we're gonna write the rules, okay? And corresponding with the exact Maryland law to say the second time you're removed, okay, after the warning, that you're removed for 30 days and given a no trespass. Because at that point in time, if I understand the process correctly, the chief, right, and could come with the management of the amenity and could say, you are not to be on this property or any amenity for the next 30 days. And if you are, you will be arrested for trespassing immediately.
Okay, two separate things. Enforcing your policy of what you're going to do as an administrative board. Most penalties are maximized. So the way I can't give legal advice.
No, I understand.
I'd give legal advice. But the way most penalties are for a first offense of this nature, first penalty cannot exceed 30 days. For a second offense, the maximum cannot exceed 90 days. So you're putting that limitation of what the maximum could be. In the transition of that, he can be in a fight with a female and a property owner or this, that, or the other, and it not have any implications on that facility. And that property owner, whether it's an association property, whether it's a homeowner or something. So if there's behavior from that person in a non-association property, are you considering that a behavior, a second offense? You can't do that. You have to limit it to that property. There's a difference between enforcing your limitations of your maximum punishment and still be overwritten by the law.
Yeah.
Okay, so you may say he's only suspended from a facility or something for 30 days. But if the court winds up intervening, a court can make it 120 days or a year or something, and your 30-day limitation means nothing.
Exactly.
It's been trumped out at that point. So the way you're talking about having an increase, I wouldn't say that the first offense is 30 days. It would be a board's decision, but the board's limited to the first offense max of 30 days. The board could then make a decision on the second offense, knowing that the max would be 90 days or so forth. As far as that being overruled by law, by trespass, it doesn't take a board's decision to do that. Okay, property owner, whether it's an association property owner or a homeowner, private property. If you come to my house and I have the law come and give you a trespass warning, when you return to that property, you're arrested.
Right.
You have violated a trespass warning. Now, to get that trespass warning, these are things that you can't come back 2 and 3 weeks later and do. If it's somebody on my property right now, I'm calling the police right now. In the police's presence, I'm giving you a trespass warning. I'm telling you, you are not allowed in my property. It's documented by the police. I don't need to call anybody. Next time when you pull back in my driveway and you're in violation of that, I call the police and you're arrested for trespass. It doesn't matter if you have a 30-day or 70-day or a 2-year maximum. That's the difference between violating a policy and breaking a law.
And just to follow up on Chief, here's what I'm getting at specifically in light of that. So if we pass a rule that says, and let me go down path A and path B that I'm thinking of. Path A, we say that you're removed after the first time, you come back the second day, do the same thing, you're removed for 30 days. Okay, if we say that as a board and the person shows up on day 3, okay, our option as a board is to get our attorney, to have them write a request for a court order, to go down to Snow Hill and try to get a court order, to then to get a trial date. And by that time, we could be into the 2024 season and the person could still be earn our amenity. If we go second way, which is to say, these rules authorize the facility manager, okay, at that amenity to, if you do it the second time, to go and to get the police, to get a trespass order. The police will escort that person to the property line and say, if you come on here again in, let's say, 30 days, okay, that you will be arrested for trespassing. And it takes the whole, us going to the attorney, going to court out of it and makes it immediately enforceable.
Doug?
Yeah, and that is nice, it's packaged nicely. I like that. Question, when a trespass order is given, is there an expiration date? In other words, does it have to say a specific date? You are going to be considered trespassing up until this date.
That's up to the property owner. If he can say he's never allowed on my property again, or
so
this week.
So as part of the process of, I like the idea of the trespass, as part of the process, this has to be sort of coterminous with what we're defining as things. So if he comes in on day 3, guess what? You know, you're going to get a trespass order and you are not allowed, you will be arrested if you come back on this property between now and this date.
Well, actually, that would happen at the second time.
Right, the second time.
He goes and if he comes back the third day, he's arrested. Now, here's what that requires from the association, just so we know, because I think that I don't want to take, I will take this liberty. The chief and I have had this discussion more than once. Generally, when there's a problem inside Ocean Pines, we handle it backwards from the, okay? Because if you offend me, the first thing I don't want to do is call 911. And I wait until, if it happens on a Friday, I wait until Monday to go in and talk with the police. And that is kind of like essentially a waste of my time and a waste of their time. The advice is, and this would be in this policy, to the facility manager, if this happens, okay, you call the police now on the 911 number. Okay, because that puts it in an entirely different path for enforcement and ability to enforce it. So concurrent with writing this policy to say, you can get the trespass order for 30 days. The second time we could make it 60 days. The third time we could make it forever. Okay. And that would hold up under Maryland law is the understanding of the people that run that facility within the association that this is what you do and there's no exception. And by the way, when you get the trespass order, you don't come on that property for any reason whatsoever, because if you do, you're arrested. And that requires a discipline and it's a discipline that a lot of folks don't understand. And even if they understand it, implementing it might be difficult.
And
So-
just to interject, as far as that violation of a trespass order, under common law, that's at the discretion. So as you were talking about, what if the second offense is much more severe than what the first offense was, or vice versa? The trespass order, violating the trespass order is it's basically a contempt of court. So it's actually at the judge's discretion. So the judge, your policy may say that the second offense is for 30 days. If it's a trespass that he's going before a judge, he's arrested or she is arrested and goes before a judge. The judge really doesn't care what your rule says, 30 days. He can do it. He can do 90 days in jail for it.
Yeah,
Instead of a trespass.
That's going to trump all the time.
So that's going to override what the policy is.
And the trespass order laws are written for the general population.
Correct.
This new bill is written specifically for HOAs. And this bill, as I understand it, restricts our ability to limit access to any of our amenities without the right of a public hearing and appeal process. And so we may think that we can put in this rule that we could do a trespass order, but we really may not be able to do that without, if someone requests an appeal, without going through that appeal process. So I think, sounds like we need to change some wording here and perhaps get some input from our HOA attorney as to whether a trespass order in our rules is even feasible, given that we're an HOA, not private individuals. Doug,
Move to table this motion until we get this information you noted.
second,
Second.
all in favor of tabling?
Aye.
And review of resolution MO4, that's fine. The bylaws and resolutions committee has requested as part of their routine discussion of resolutions in need of review, that resolution MO4 be reviewed. The BNR committee reviewed resolution MO4, the issue of cutting weeds and grass on private property of owners who do not do so themselves came up. The authority for the association to engage in this action is in the DRs. The committee believes no update to this resolution is needed unless there is a change to the DRs on this topic. I propose that we advise the bylaws and resolutions committee that the resolution may be considered review, as there are no plans to amend the language of the DRs on this topic. This discussion is to solicit board input on this approach. Any thoughts on that approach?
So in concept, it's fine. I don't have an issue with it, but having been a chair of the bylaws and resolutions committee years ago, the idea of we created this, list of all of the bylaws and when they'd been last been reviewed and when they were last submitted to the HOA depository. And we went through, but I don't recall, and maybe if somebody else does, you can refresh my memory, but I don't recall where, when we went through and realized there's been no changes, at the committee level, because they've been doing research on specific things and said, there's no changes here. We never really had to report up to the board to say, please verify our recommendation that this particular resolution doesn't need to be reviewed anymore.
Yeah, I get
In
that.
other words, it's like,
Yeah.
there's no problem. Are we adding an extra layer of administrative overhead that maybe we don't need? I
Yeah, and
don't have a strong feeling one way or the other, just up for discussion.
yeah, Doug, my reason for bringing this is that the question came up as to whether the board had any plan to amend the language of the DRs on the cutting of weeds and grass. And my thought was, no, but I'm one director, I'm not 7. So I'm just asking, do we as a body have any plans to amend the rule, the issue of cutting weeds and grass on private property by our staff? Frank?
I would only say this, okay? And John is still there. John, you're still there, hopefully. It has, I don't know how long it's been, to be honest, since we've changed the DRs. My understanding is it's been, you're looking at decades, not years, okay? And it is a terribly complex process, okay? So I would say this, we have a motion to right now amend the DRs for short-term rentals. If we are going to amend any DRs, we should talk with the committee and engage the committee to get them in front of us pretty doggone quick. Because
The Bylaws and Resolutions
yeah.
Committee?
Simply because, and we should be thinking that and maybe have that as a separate discussion topic after they report to us, simply because it is so complex to do. And it's not an easy task. And when I say it's not an easy task, I mean, for those not really familiar, because I've been kind of working with them on it. So most of us are familiar with the election, right? We have an election ballot, it's done. Okay. With the referendum, we went through a process, and the referendum process itself was kind of complex and kind of expensive. But again, we went through it. We did what we had to do. We put it out for vote and it was done. The DR process works entirely different. Okay, it's not run by the elections committee, it's run by the staff. And if you live in a section that has 200 homes, for example, they send out the initial information to that section. And you really, under the rules, vote on that until you get 100 homes plus one vote, one way or the other. So you can be dealing with multiple contacts of the homeowners over multiple periods of time, depending on how much votes you get back.
Yeah.
And keeping track of it by section is kind of in itself an enormous task. Okay, so I would say this, we have one more, and plus there are other implications that come out because it hasn't been done so long, like that really it's not a vote. What you're voting to give somebody is the power of attorney to go and give a vote. Okay, so if we're going to do it, and we're going to do it one time, I would just submit, let's follow, the economy of scale thing. If we have 10 changes in the DRs, let's do 10. Let's don't do it 10 times. Let's do 10 of them at the same time to go through it. That's my only input based on what I know so far.
Yeah, just understand that bylaws is not recommending change of the DRs. It's not their role to do that. That would be our role. And I'm just asking, do we have intention as a board to do that on this topic?
On this topic, no.
Yeah, I would say no.
But
No. Okay, so I can go back to them and consider it reviewed. Okay. And then the next one is just enforcement of open violations and legal.
So I propose a motion to enforce the open violations in legal. May I have a second?
You gotta read the motion.
Oh, do I read I'm sorry. The motion is to declare the existence of the open violations on properties included on the attachment list, thereby suspending their voting rights and use of association amenities for as long as the violations continue to remain open. Okay? And the purpose and effect, ARC and CPI believe that approving this request will shorten the timeline to compliance and save the association money and provide a better forum for property owners to work out their problems as opposed to Worcester County court systems. This action does not mean that property owners who fail to comply during this period may not be forwarded to the attorney if it remains necessary to force compliance. A bit of background, the current method used to persuade the residents to comply with open violations on their property is to send 2 notices, after which case is referred to the general manager for further action, which means the case is sent to legal counsel, provided the property owner has not complied prior to that. Even in normal times, this has proven to be inefficient and costly to the association. Over the past 2 years, COVID has made the situation worse since the courts were closed for much of that time. And some of the first notices shown above on some of the first notices shown above and some second notices predate COVID. The change in legal counsel and lack of attention by legal counsel to diligently pursue cases can also be a contributing factor. All the attached violations have been inspected by members of the ARC to verify their status. All violations have been reviewed as of the date of this request and all remain open. The attached violations represent and remain cases in legal as of December 31st, 2021. 15 cases have been referred to legal in 2022, and 3 have been forwarded to the GM for further action. At the April 21st, 2022 board meeting, ARC brought to the board's attention the need to use an interim enforcement tool currently at their disposal to help reduce legal costs and to try to prevent property owners from having to become involved with the county courts. The authority to grant this request is found in the Declaration of Restrictions, the OPA Articles of Amendments and Restatements dated September 12, 2013, and the bylaws, I'm sorry. ARC and CPI intend make use of this process to bring more cases like this to the board for action. So now, may I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Discussion. Doug?
So I did a little research and I think this is a good first step, but I if you look at 301C, all right, of our bylaws, and you look at section 12G of our Declaration of Restrictions, at least in the sections 1 through 8, it gives obviously the authority to, rescind anybody's ability to vote if you're in continuing violation. But what, and they use the word declare, all right? So in thinking about it, I think we have every right to obviously make sure that if you're on this list, you don't have the ability to vote. I think it should, I don't know, maybe we should argue or discuss whether it should be automatic. All right. In other words, the minute you become, the minute you get on this list because you have an open violation that hasn't been addressed, then your ability to vote is automatically revoked. I don't know if that's the right approach, but that's a very short, straightforward approach to something that we're already allowed to do. So the idea of declaring that this is a kind of the process I'm thinking about. How would we go about declaring? Now, obviously, the general manager and his staff know of the open violations. Okay, if we have to wait a month, to do it at a board meeting, that's one thing. Do we want to do it it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they want to do it in a shorter time period. So the idea would be, should we have a process that says, hey, we've gone through our normal, iterations and property XYZ is now in violation of one of the terms and conditions in the DRs. Now we should automatically revoke their rights to vote. And how do we enact that process? In other words, how should we go through? I think we need to develop that and say, because if they're looking for something in a shorter term, that's something we can do every day. We already have our documents already allow us to do that. So the question is, how should we do it procedurally?
Frank.
So I don't have the document in front of me, but I think this is I think this is 100% correct. We have skinnied down the process of violations of our DRs to the point where you have essentially as a homeowner, okay, 30 days to correct the violation. And after that 30 days, the GM is authorized to go to court. At that same point, we are authorized to declare them in continuing violation. And in revising that through accident, not intent, okay, the ARC process also, I believe, fully complies with the new House bill in that it has an appeal process, and ARC meets twice a month where they can hear those appeals, okay? Where I believe we may not comply with the existing ARC proposals and the new House bill is that ARC cannot be overruled by the board. And I don't know if the new House bill requires that the board has the ability to override that appeal. I just don't know if it exists or not. But my point in doing that is this ties into the last couple of things because I'm all in favor of doing this and I'll vote for it, but I want to point out something. And Tom's here. Tom, you can ask to suspend Robert's rule. I believe that 8 Willow Way has been in violation since 2008 or perhaps even 2004. So I will tell you that this process that we have right now, where we wait 30 days and go to court, is from a homeowner standpoint of having somebody with a serious violation that's affecting your property as close to totally worthless as you can get and still be on the planet Earth.
Okay, I'm gonna suspend Robert's rules and ask Linda to verify.
8 Willow Way, this is a new violation. The unregistered vehicles from 3 years ago were VW buses. These are 2 other vehicles.
And when was the first time in 2008? Unregistered vehicles.
It was unregistered vehicles, but our attorney has to be, since it's not the vehicles as pictured, it has to be a new violation.
So let me just kind of give you this won't be 100% factual, but the view. So you put unregistered vehicles in their driveway, we go through the ARC process, we go to court. Okay, they move the vehicles. Okay, they bring back vehicles at a different time, we go through the process again. Same thing, same repeat, same video since 2008, repeated over and over. Okay, and they end up again. And that's why if you're next to them, and I mean, by the way,
Great.
after I heard about this, I went and looked at the vehicles. They are junk vehicles that you would not want them next to your house. Okay. And it is a totally worthless process that costs us money, gets people frustrated. They want to know why we can't do anything. Everybody in this room is affected one way or the other, including the chief who gets, why in the hell can't you do something since this is going on for decades? And that goes back to the other thing. We can keep this process and declare their voting rights. My guess is they don't care.
No.
Okay. And my guess is if you wanted, for those that say, well, we don't enforce, we've been trying to enforce this since 2008 using the legal system that we have. And we have made absolutely zero progress. Zero.
Yeah.
Okay. So it goes back to the other thing. I would just say, insanity is keep trying to do the same thing over and over, hoping to get a different result. Or we can try to put a process in place where we get a different result. And that would mean changing the DRs, which again is a pretty mean task.
And so Doug, you mentioned the restriction of voting rights. This also includes restriction of access to amenities.
Hold on, I have it right here. I believe it does.
It does.
It does.
Alright, yeah.
And so are you wanting to exclude that or you just didn't mention that?
I just didn't mention,
Okay.
whatever, exclusions are included in our DRs can be followed up on.
Okay. So any other discussion of this? Are we ready to vote?
Could I ask a question? Since you opened
This is, okay.
Linda mentioned that we have a legal opinion or something that somebody removes a car with a court order then a week later brings it back, and we have to file a new violation.
No, she only said if it's different vehicles. Is that correct?
Yes.
I don't know. Do we have a written opinion on that? Because that doesn't make any sense to me. I mean,
In the original court order,
if I were a judge, I'd be a little ticked off. Somebody comes to my court and they get an order to remove a vehicle, and the next week the guy brings in a different vehicle, but it's still in violation. I mean, it just seems to me that we're not looking into this enough. And
Linda, do you have a written
I'd like to see
opinion on this?
legal opinion.
We can get a legal
Written,
opinion.
right?
Okay, reinstate Robert's rules. Frank?
Because I want to answer it. Specifically, I will answer Willow Way. Specifically, when we just were discussing a property on Bramblewood, a member of the media in this room contacted me and said, well, if you're going to do that, you should look at 8 Willow Way, because they've been in violations since
But the expert on this is our CPI department, of which Linda is the head.
So.
And so that's the expertise that we're going to work off of.
Right. So when I contacted them, okay, and found out it was in fact true that they were in violation, okay, and in fact, we had gone to court, then I talked with the GM and the board and said, we should go for a contempt order. And we went through that process of going through and having process servers come out and take photos and go through the legal expense of doing that. And a ruling came down, which was, it's a different vehicle. So you're not in contempt of court.
Right.
We don't control the legal system.
Right. But we have this. Any other discussion?
Yeah, 2 quick things. Number one, just confirm that the 12G of the DR say that the Board of Directors Association shall have the right to suspend the voting rights and the right of use of any recreational facilities of the association. Okay, so it does.
I knew that.
The second question is, I want to make sure I understand what if we vote for this, and I'm not saying I don't agree with it, I'm just saying, so what's the outcome? We all vote and we pass this, all right? It says suspending the voting rights and the use of association amenities as long as violations continue to remain open. I guess you're saying that's automatically 2 things are going to happen, right? And we're going to identify these individuals who are going to say, you no longer have a right to vote, which I would agree with Frank. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, so what? Anybody who has a violation that's been since, I believe the one you're talking about was probably back in 2008 or 9.
Missed a lot of elections.
And then the second would be the amenities. Question is, and I agree with it, how do we enforce that?
Okay, I think this was meant to say that fee-based amenities. And Linda had identified a mechanism within the North Star system that would allow us to enforce
Okay, so,
access.
all right, because that's not in here, and I want to make sure that we can pass the.
So may I offer a friendly amendment to change this to the use of fee-based association amenities? Is there a second to that?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
All in favor of the amendment to this, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the motion as amended? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we have appointments. We have Louis Furman, who's first term aquatics, who is endorsed based on prior experience with committee service. I move that we approve this. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Harold Dick Keeling for Budget and Finance. This will be a reappointment of him. And based on his prior service, I move that we approve this. Second,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
And since that carried, I'm also going to, as chair, appoint him to continue in the chairmanship of that committee. Next, we have Communications Committee. We have first term Carrie Matheson, excuse me, who has background project manager and similar experience that's considered valuable. I move that we approve this appointment. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Then we have 2 second-term renewals on Communications Committee, Patricia Seidel and Diana Snyder. based on their prior service and contribution. I move that we approve these two together. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have Patricia Gamby, first term environmental and natural assets. This is also based on relevant experience. The recommendation of the chair. I move that we approve this.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have Catherine Noble, first term racket sports. And that is based also on relevant experience with the sport. I move that we approve this one. All in favor?
Aye.
And then William Barnard.
Back up
Sorry,
one.
I'm so he didn't second it.
Back up one. You didn't
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Now we have William Barnard. I don't see his paperwork.
He's gonna be a chair.
Oh, right.
He's being promoted.
Yeah.
Patty Stevens is stepping down as the chair.
Yeah, she had spoken to me about that and I told her that I would recommend him as chair during this meeting. And so I so declare. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.